Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:09 p.m. Central, coming at you from Florida, as always. And Jay will be here shortly. Home Depot's whooping him up again. And we got Reverend Michael Carter here. It's really great to have you here, Michael.
Brother, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. And again, want to thank Mark Eddy for getting that info to you, and also to thank Michelle for making this happen. Michelle DeRochers.
Definitely. And before we were starting the show, I was talking about some of the things I've gone through with seeing the light beings. And I do believe a lot of my phenomenon has something to do with the fact that I went through that suffering at such an early age. It opened my senses,
Yeah.
like a shamanic death of sorts.
Yes.
And that's the only thing I could figure is what did it. I mean, that's a lot. When you go through that and lose a freaking testicle, that's a lot of suffering. And then my dad had died several years later, and all this weird stuff started happening from seeing the beings of light multiple times. I've even seen those like in the heavens, like a star, but it ain't a star. It's like a person standing up there.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's trying to communicate. It's an angel, a deceased loved one. I always bring up Ron Howard's Cocoon. You ever see those movies?
Yes.
Those Opie. I think he was doing some shrooms for those or something. But the light beings, there's something to that. And well, anyway, the situation with my dad passing, he was a very macho, determined individual, and if there was a way for him to come through from the other side, it would be him for sure. He was a pest sometimes. Loved him, but definitely a scary pest at times and strong. So, I mean, I can remember a time where me and a friend were driving down the road, and we had been partying, being stupid. We were younger, and we saw a being of light on a cloud, and it seemed like it was going like that. And it was one of those situations where we pulled over to look at it. And I was like, do you see that? Yes. Do you see that? And we both saw it. But somehow that suffering opens you up. And from seeing the beings of light, there's some kind of connection with them and the sun. And then is it Christ consciousness? Probably so. Like I said, they must have a boss. Maybe that's Jesus. I don't know, but they're getting that glow from somewhere, from Jesus the sun or whatever. But there's definitely shamans talk about luminous beings of light. We hear about that a lot as well.
Yeah.
And as beings of light come up a lot with the stuff you've researched from other people or yourself, is that something you've heard a lot of?
Yeah. I'll go back to the beginning of what you were saying. A lot of times it takes something to wake us up. And that could be a divorce, death of a loved one, NDE, OBE, to make us kind of rethink what we think life is about. And I think that is universal in a lot of ways, because when you do with the studies that have been done about people who've had transformations, and it doesn't have to be UFO stuff, that there was an event that triggered this change. Beings of light, you hear a lot about in people's spiritual experiences. Some people will call an experience with an angel as a being of light, or seeing the angel as a being of light. I know that when I had my first experience with these gray folk, well, they weren't really gray. I have pictures. I have artwork of the people that I've met, and so you can see he's not white. He's not gray. He's chalk white. The being I saw had a like a tight fitting jumpsuit on, and it looked like Reynolds wrap. I just had an artist put the Buddha robe on him. He's meditating.
Cool. Yeah,
But I say all that to say um, that he was light. I mean, I saw his form, but around him was a blue light. And I'm saying him, it could have been a she, could have been an android. And around the blue light was a very, very bright light that was almost blinding. So you hear a lot of talk, a lot of witnessing in literature about beings of light. So, yeah, this has been going on for eons. These descriptions of what people see. Um, you see it in religious art where, and especially in during Renaissance time, you'll see maybe a picture of Jesus or a saint, and around them you'll see the light, like part of the aura, that kind of thing. So yeah, this is typical when people have had these experiences. I think that's important because it lets you know that you're not crazy. That other people have been seeing this for centuries, and this is just not something that I made up. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I'm curious to what your mind thinks about the sun. I mean, is that like, I know I've seen those little watchtower things from Jehovah's Witnesses, like a dude in a throne, and that's the sun. Is it God? What is the sun? What do you think? I'm just curious to your intelligence level. What do you think of the sun?
Well, I mean, listen, it's light.
It's
And it's
weird.
and so you do hear about. I mean, look, tomorrow I'm sorry, Sunday I'm going to work on Sunday. Back before there was a Christianity, people worshipped the sun. And when the sun would go down, you know, uh, things got light, and you had eclipses, and the sun is gone, and the sun, along with water, was life giving. So some people worship the sun. I'm a sun worshiper of sorts. I love the beach, any beach. And I love to lay out there in that sun, get the vitamin D, get recharged. But here I am in the 21st century, but people have been doing this for eons. So the sun is whatever you want to make it. In Egyptian time, Akhenaten was talking about the one God. Now we see that depicted as what looks like the sun. To me, it looks like a disk giving off rays of energy. But the sun has always been a powerful symbol in human cosmology and mythology from time immemorial.
I know I've had some strange sun experiences where I can let the, close your eyes and how the white light fills your body. And there
Yeah,
was a point at my fiance Christina's old house we were at. There was a woman there that had dementia, her grandmother, and she was a nurse and helping her transition. And I went outside and let that white light, you know, kind of like a meditative thing, and then came inside and actually saw astrally what looked like a gray standing over her, and it kind of looked at me, and it was almost like you're seeing a sunspot, but it ain't a sunspot. Like it was kind of like pink, like astral weird. It wasn't physical, but and she also, my fiance said she saw one standing over me one night that was scary. But I've had strange experiences where that sun, like I don't know if it's giving me like He-Man vision or something, but there's been some weird things with it for sure. Like it
yeah,
kind of,
I remember when I first started meditating and doing visualization, and before I started doing energy healing, a friend of mine who was a psychic would say, you got to boost your energy up. He said there are many ways you can do that. You can give yourself the Reiki energy. You can visualize yourself inside the sun. Like so this light, the sun is light, the sun is energy, the sun is purification. And this is not only symbolic, but there's a truth to it, and this has been going on since human beings have been on the planet. Um, and so I think it is whatever your intuition tells it that says it is for you, but it's very powerful. It's a sign of resurrection, of new life, along with other things in nature as well. So the sun is a very powerful archetype.
and then is it the source of creation, and we're like tadpoles of it. Exploring. That's kind of the shamanic way through the web of life. We're the sun's webcams. There's definitely a lot to it for sure. And I'm curious. I know Wally Wagner had mentioned an experience you went
Yes, I was
through.
going to bring Wally up.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
that was
I
great.
listened. I listened to that interview.
That was good. He was like,
Yeah,
I was like, wow.
yeah,
I said, preacher that's gone rogue,
yeah.
but it was good. It
Yeah,
was
no,
good.
Wally is. I mean, and we discuss a lot of this because a lot of this was kind of new to Wally. And I know some of the stuff we were talking about is probably heretical in his tradition. I mean, I was raised Baptist, but I'm not Baptist anymore. But it's we need more clergy talking about this
Yes,
because
definitely.
um, it definitely will affect us going forward as a species. I bring it up occasionally in my congregation. It's not a UFO church. I went to seminary and a very progressive seminary, but once in a while I may throw in some talk about UFOs or just metaphysics or the paranormal, just to make sure they're listening. Um, but religion is going to have to face this, especially after what we've encountered this week. And I know we got time; we can get to that. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, religion is going to have to weigh in on this because, um, especially Christian churches, not just Christian churches, but especially Christian churches are losing members. Members are leaving. By in the next 5 to 10 years, um, America, Europe has already gone through it and handled it well. I think is going to be a mostly secular nation. There are most people who say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And some people just say, I have no religious affiliation. I think that the church needs to catch up with modern times, um, and that you have to make the stories. Um, you have to make the stories relevant for today, because just because someone said something 2,500 years ago, or even 5,000 years ago, if you're looking at Hinduism, um, that doesn't make it true for today, or it may not have resonance for today, but it may have. But if you're going to be behind a lot of dogma and thou shalt nots, people are like, that's not the world I live in, I'm out of here. So in order to be relevant, the church is going to have to, all religions, I think, but the Christian church is going to have to kind of get with the program, get with the
Update a
program.
little. Update the memo.
Yeah.
For sure. And so, was your first initial experience the healing situation that happened to you? Was
No,
that
when I listened to Wally, Wally got two separate experiences. He put them into one, bless his heart.
okay?
But
It
no,
happens, right?
I had a healing in 2019. We can get to that. The
Okay.
healing that I got was from this man. He looked more humanoid. He was
Okay.
a Nordic person.
All right.
Um, my initial contact, where I actually saw them, was December 28th, 1989. My ex-wife, we came back from Mexico from seeing the pyramids at Chichen Itza and Tulum on the Yucatan. Wonderful. And, wondering, how did the Mayan, where were they getting all this information about equinoxes and eclipses and came home that night. Um, it was cold, uh, and my wife wanted to go home. When we came back from JFK, I had been invited to a get together, and she said, "You go. I'm tired. I'm going to unpack." So I unpacked and I caught the subway down to Hell's Kitchen around Times Square, and I hung out with some friends. I wanted to show off a bit. I was nice and copper colored. The hair was lighter, and I wanted to gloat. We no adult beverages were imbibed. I tell this story all the time. I'm a deviled egg freak, so I had tons of deviled eggs, and I went home that night. I don't know whether I had to get up to use the bathroom or what, but when I sleep on my stomach, and when I got up, this being was at the foot of my bed, about 4 feet tall, tops, had on a Reynolds wrap looking suit. Like I said, behind him was a blue light, and behind that was a white light in the apartment in Manhattan. I lived on the Upper West Side. My wife at the time could not wake up, or she did not wake up. There's a caveat to that story because when I wrote my last book, I put that in there. And she said, I remember that night. I've never seen you so frightened. And she said, I saw these little shadowy beings in the room, but a voice just kept telling me to go to sleep. So anyway, I pulled the covers up over my head and got in the fetal position. I've never been that scared. And I felt like I was outside. It felt like I had the covers up, but it was like freezing all of a sudden. And I didn't pull the covers down, and I heard this wind, like I was in the wind, like whoosh, whoosh. And I was like, my God, I'm the adrenaline's going. I'm trying to, and I finally grew a pair, and I pulled the covers down, and nobody was there. She woke up. I told her what I saw. I told some friends of mine about it. And one friend of mine said, Michael, she was an astrologer. She said, I want you to go down to Alphabet City, and I want you get to like St. Mark's and 4th Street. If you live in New York, you know what I'm talking about if you live there. And she said, you're going to see a fence, and you're going to see some artwork someone had done on it. And tell me if that's what you saw. And I went down there the next day, and someone had been spray painting and pictures of grays. So I went back and told her. That helped me realize I wasn't too crazy. And they came every full and new moon. Sometimes one time they showed me a picture of a past life. They showed me a picture of an event that was going to happen. I felt like I was paralyzed. I felt like I was always having electricity going through me. And every full and new moon, that's twice a month for about 8 months, almost a year. They would always come when my wife at the time, Sandy, was not there. And so just to make a long story short, as far as those initial contacts, I was already moving away from Orthodox Christianity. And this kind of pushed me that way. But it wasn't, I had a choice, but I was studying. It didn't work for me anymore. I don't knock the Baptist tradition. I don't knock it, but it didn't work for me anymore. I was reading existential philosophy. I was going to metaphysical churches. I was studying psychic phenomena. And so when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So and so for many, many years, I said, well, I'm not a Christian. I'm a follower of the teachings of Jesus, because Jesus was a Jew, but his teachings are not Christianity. Paul started Christianity. Yes. So I went to seminary, the Christianity that we practice, that's practiced today in the United States and in the Western world. So, and then I met other beings along the way, but I felt I started changing. I started doing healing work, Reiki and other energy work. I got by on less sleep. I could get by on less sleep. My skin, my nail and hair was growing faster than usual. I felt more intelligent. Most importantly for me, because my message is mostly the spiritual message. I don't care about nuts and bolts and back engineering. Greater minds than they can work on that. I'm more into the transformational part that some people have, but I felt more, I can't explain it. I just felt more loving. I felt more vulnerable. I felt my heart was opened more. Now, I was working on this, so I don't want people to think, oh, a magic wand came. I was already working on this path, but they kind of expedited it. And I started reading and studying, and like right now, Jesus is a big part of my life. He's one of the people that shows me a model of how to live. So does Buddha, so does a lot of other folks. But I've realized that it really is just about love. And whatever you can call God, whatever you want to call he, she, it. And so that's what I focus on, because a lot of the experiencers, not all, that I have come in contact with have said, this has been a positive for me. My life has changed for the better after meeting some of these beings. And that's where I am.
Definitely. And I, my dad was a preacher and I was raised Christian, and I still have those attributes and believe that, there's truth to Christ. When I went through all I went through, I started studying many different belief systems, from Buddhism to American Indian, shamanism. And Uh, I even got into Norse stuff, not too much, but I love reading that stuff. Even get Marvel comics with Thor and all that stuff in it.
Yeah, yeah.
I just those
It's
stories are
it's it's a
beautiful.
powerful it's a
Yeah,
powerful spirituality. Yeah.
and we've had people on about shamanism and that, and it's just and when it comes to native, when they're on and they talk about star people and UFOs and
That's right.
Bigfoot,
That's exactly right.
it seems more truthful to me. Maybe there's still some things that are scary in it, but there's something powerful about it.
I agree. I agree. And so and you have to be able to embrace that fear because that's where the change comes. I'm not saying, if stuff doesn't resonate with you because they're darker forces sometimes. Yeah, of course. Common sense says, whoa, I need to slow my roll with this. But, um, all of these things form who you are and who we are. And you just pick a path that resonates with you. And sometimes they all resonate at different parts of my life,
They all
you
have
know,
truth.
and there um so when people argue over religion and argue over, and of course history, people fight wars over this stuff. I'm
Yeah.
just not there. I'm just not there. I mean, whatever path works for you, it works for you, but you don't want to force your path on someone else. Because the bottom line is this, Jeffrey, and I know you know this. I know what you believe by how you treat me, how you treat the earth. I know folks that are every Wednesday night, they're in Bible study. I know people who are in the temple or in the mosque on Friday nights. They're in church on Sunday, and they will treat you like you're something on the bottom of their shoe. But they're at church, they're at Bible study on Wednesday, but they don't live it. And so I know, well, Yeshua says, um, by their fruits you shall know them. So I know people can tell me, Michael, I believe this and I believe that, and I listen because I'm not going to disrespect. But and same thing with me, vice versa. You know what I believe by how I treat you, how I treat the earth, how I treat sentient beings. That will tell you all you need to know about me. So I leave it there.
And I know with my UFO experiences, I've had some to where you see craft that seems like it's there for you in the sky. And you don't want to get too, egotistic about that, but that's what it seemed like many
Yeah, yeah,
times.
yes.
And I even had a friend named Rich say, Jeffrey, you're attracting them here. And I didn't really know how I was. But the beings, there was one time I saw some small cloaked beings in the woods with a friend named Brian. And they were and at that time, I know I'd been reading a lot of stuff about Celtic otherworld and the fairy realm and weird stuff. So maybe it was something from that or alien. I don't know. Maybe that's the same thing. Some people say it is. Fae and aliens is kind of the same thing. But it was like three cloaked beings, and they kind of like Jawas, but skinny. And I couldn't see their faces, but you knew it was like cloaks. And there was a black box. And I asked Brian, do you see that? Yes, he saw it. We both saw it. And then a black cat I had jumped towards them and they vanished. And I don't know what they were, but that black box always creeps me out. The Hellraiser box or whatever, Phantasm or something weird from a horror movie. But I don't. I know Stephen Greer has a lot of controversy. I've seen a few of his things. I've never interviewed him, but I know when I saw those weird little small beings on something he was, pushing around. I don't know if those were real, but my first thought was that what was under those cloaks, those
Right.
little bitty mummy things. But that was one of my experiences with the light beings was those little cloaked beings. And maybe they
Yeah.
were little grays. I don't know what they were. But I couldn't see them. You couldn't see their faces.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
never forget it, do you? Yes, for sure.
No, you don't. Who was it? Oliver Wendell Holmes said, and I'm paraphrasing, that once the mind is stretched, it's hard for it to go back to its original dimensions. And that's what happens, I think, from my own experiences and from studies. People who have had these experiences, and I'm not talking about just UFO contacts. I'm talking about out of body, NDEs. Um, I know someone who had an experience just jogging in San Francisco right before the sun came up. And he just said, I don't know what happened. I was jogging and I stopped and I felt one with everything. Like the tree was me, the car was me, the plant was, and then he couldn't live like that. Well, it's hard to sustain that, but it just transformed him. This feeling of oneness, the law of one, that we all come from the same source. We may call it by different names, we may look different, but that's where we come from. And so this is, I think, what saints and avatars have been trying to tell us who come here. Sometimes we don't treat them so well. Uh, he, she's, whoever, but they're trying to tell us. And now with quantum theory and quantum physics, we're getting it. What our ancestors were trying to tell us eons ago, that we're all one. That what I do to myself, I do to you, and vice versa.
And one time I had Neil Donald Walsh on, Conversations
Yes.
with God. Those books helped me a lot. I think they kept me out of jail, like or something. Like they really helped me. But I was surprised he even came on the show. But one thing I always remember that God tells him in those books is, all my messengers have been defiled. It's like he sends people, and then humanity, or that whatever dark part, goes after them, and it feels like that. It feels like that with our lives.
It's true. I mean, Jesus talked about that too when he was talking during his ministry, that all the prophets you've killed, you've treated badly, but that's what happens. The prophets, if you're a prophet, boy, you got a different kind of thing going on, because usually you don't live long, and it's rough. It's rough being a pioneer, but somebody's got to do it.
Definitely. So what have some of your experiences been like? What are some of the visual ones with UFOs? I mean, I know you talked about one sighting, but what are some of your other experiences?
Most of my experience, if not all, have been in my bedroom. I cannot tell you that I have seen a ship. When I was regressed, for instance, Bud Hopkins, the late Bud Hopkins, regressed me early on, and the late Gene Mundy, and they said from what came up, I was on a ship. I don't remember any of that. All I remember is when I was having visits in my bedroom. I remember one time this being came in, this reptilian,
Oh, wow.
and they get a bad rap. Not that, I mean, nothing bad happened to me. Again, I was home alone. This being at the Excelsior Hotel, New York City, residential hotel, still there, 45 West 81st Street between Columbus Avenue, Central Park West. This being walked through my wall. Hey, Jay.
He had some technical trouble.
Walked through the wall. Hope you had a good shift. I'm glad you made it.
Thank you.
He was having some weird technical stuff with StreamYard. It's fixed now, but he showed us a dinosaur like reptilian. And yeah, the things with reptilians, I could understand there's some of them that are like Bigfoot. I'm sure there's some arsehole ones that are mean or whatever, but to say every one of them, that's kind of like genocidal, thought.
Jay, Jeffrey, we do that with each other.
Yes.
We do that, and we do it with them. If the stereotype is this, if a black person runs down the street and steals a woman's purse, you don't say all black people are thieves. You don't say that. Well, some people do. Well, if a reptilian, if you have a bad experience, or if it's if Jay wasn't here, if one of these brothers or sisters do something to you, you don't say all of them are like that. That's not right, but we do that. So I go back to
this
reptilian walked through my wall, big brother, buffed, had on a wife beater, had a tail, heart attack time for Michael, and touched me. And it's like the Bible, don't be afraid. They always tell you that. The angel comes tonight, don't be afraid. That's easy for them to say. And just stared at me, touched me, talked to me with his mouth, the mouth doesn't move. You hear it. It's like I had a speaker in my head. It's telepathic.
It's like your own inner dialogue, but in another voice. But it's
Yeah,
your voice. But it's your
there,
voice.
there
That's
it
what I've
is.
heard people say.
No, this wasn't my voice. This was his.
Oh,
Yeah, and I know it was a he. I guess because the voice sounded like a he. But that was it, and then left.
wow.
That's happened twice. But I didn't go and say, "Oh my God, they're all evil and they're the serpent from Genesis and all that." It was an experience. This person, the praying mantis, visited me in 2019.
Those freak me out.
This person, I showed you this brother, more humanoid looking. I had a blood clot. I'll tell you that story.
Okay.
I had a blood clot. My life was a country western song. In 2013, my dad died. I was getting divorced. I was getting fired from my job as a chaplain at a hospital down here. My dad had died in January. July 4th, 2013. Here's the backstory. I have a lot of friends who served in Southeast Asia and Vietnam. Most of them, if not all, like special forces, or they were grunts. Some of them would talk to me about what they went through. A lot of them didn't, obviously. One of them was telling me about how you slept. Sometimes, you sleep in a foxhole. It's got water in it, rainwater, incoming, going in and out. You grab an hour's sleep if you could, that kind of thing. That's the backstory because on July 4th, 2013, in Asheville, North Carolina, so you can look it up, it was severe thunderstorms, severe. Sounded like artillery. I was happy. Why? Because I don't like fireworks. And no, I did not serve. I don't like them. I don't like it. They start at 9:30. You find a parking space at 7. They don't start for 2.5 hours later. Mosquitoes eating you up. You're in the park. People are sitting so close to you, you feel like you need a lubricant. I just don't like it.
I understand.
So that night, they canceled it. Thank you. Because of severe thunderstorms. I mean, it sounded like artillery. And I said to myself, and Jay, this was before you came, I usually sleep on my stomach. So when I turn around, I turned around and I said, this is what my friends must have been going through in 68, 69. I turned around. I just felt there was the room, it was a weird energy. The blonde guy was there with a hoodie, not a hoodie, a cowl that they wore like in the Middle Ages, a hoodie. It looked like a hoodie. Rope belt, long robe, and this brother was built. You could see how ripped he was through the robe. I turned around. It was similar feeling to 1989, heart beating, fight or flight. And he held his hand out. I had a blood clot. I didn't know what a blood clot was. It was from my ankle to my groin area. I was injecting myself with the Nexaparin, a blood thinner. I was on Coumadin, what they call Wayfaring. My leg was as big as LeBron James. I wish I was built like that. I'm muscular, but I'm thin. I swim. He held his hand out, the blonde brother, looked like a Viking with the hoodie, and an apple green light came out of his hand and hit me in my stomach. I didn't feel it, but I saw it. And then he just dissolved. His molecules just dispersed. I call, and you probably know this guy. Well, I looked down at my leg, and they're normal. The leg is normal. The leg is normal. All the swelling is gone. I call, and I didn't have the comment. I didn't, you're not thinking I could have took a picture of it with my phone. Well, back then it was kind of flip phones. But I called Preston Dennett. Do you know Preston?
Yes.
Okay,
He's on
yeah.
the network now.
Yeah, I
He
called
just started.
Preston because Preston has written a book on UFO healings, and he's put me in his second book, which is away. But he had two of them. But I called Preston, and it's when they visited me, it was 10 of 7, and he was still living on the West Coast, and now he lives in Georgia. So it was 10 of 7 there. So he didn't pick up. I guess he was out. But I told Preston about it. My daughter and my ex-wife, they both did this at the same time. They healed your leg. My leg was healed. Now, here's the thing. When I went to the doctor, because every 10 days I was getting my finger stuck to check the blood and all that, I had to explain to them what happened. I didn't tell them the truth because they would have locked me up. But they were very, very, it was like the interrogation. I said, well, maybe the medicine's working. No, it doesn't work that quickly. And you were just here 10 days ago, Mr. Carter. You were just here a week, 10 days ago. So finally, I said to them, because I was running out of lies, and I said to them, but are you happy? I'm better. I can't explain what happened, and neither can you, but I'm better. Wasn't that the goal? And it put them on the defense. Oh, yes. No, don't get us wrong, Mr. Carter. It's not that we're not happy, but, and so that was the name of that tune. And they took me off of they wanted me to be on Coumadin for life. And I said, I didn't want to do that. So after those 3 months, I was off. 4 months, 3.5, 4 months. I got one more for you. If you said you would, this person, and I'll do it very quickly.
Those are always fascinating and creepy at the same time.
The praying mantis.
Yes.
I had never seen a praying mantis. I had never seen a blonde, blue-eyed person. My friends in Europe, they say that, well, we see Nordics all the time. Not just Nordic people. I'm talking about extraterrestrials. Okay, I did a conference in Knoxville. It was memorable for a lot of ways. I don't like to drive, but I do. And I drove to Knoxville, 2-hour drive. It was at University of Knoxville. So I'm there. It's went
a neat
well.
City, isn't it?
It's neat. It really is. I got my first standing ovation.
Oh, awesome.
And that's not why I do it, but I said, oh my God, these people are standing up. So I made some friends there. And so when I got back to North Carolina, I got a call from someone named Tanya, who's a friend I met there. And she said, wonderful talk, bought your books, let's stay in touch. She said, I have a friend who I told her about your talk, because I talk about the spirituality of contact. And she said, I used to talk about the Bible and UFOs. I tie it in, but I talk about the spiritual transformation. Make a long story short, she said, I have a friend who needs to talk to you. And I said, oh, okay. What about? She said, she's got something to tell you. She said, she's a psychic and she's a lawyer. I said, now that is an interesting combination. I didn't think to ask what type of jurisprudence she practiced. But she said, can I give her your number? I said, yeah. I get a call. She says, I heard about you. Wonderful. I'm going to get your books. I heard it was wonderful. I got a message I need to give you. Please, are you willing to hear it? I said, yeah. She said, I see praying mantis beings around you. I said, okay. I mean, what are you going to say to that? What are you supposed to say? I said, okay. She said, I'm serious. I said, no, I believe you. I believe you. She says, and I'm telling you, you're going to, in 3 days' time, in 72 hours, you're going to see one. I was like, oh, okay. thank you. And thank you for your support and blah, blah, blah. So the first night, the next, after I thought maybe it was auto suggestion. I felt I lived in an apartment then. Now we have a house. It was a little weird. I don't know. It just felt weird. It felt the energy in my apartment started feeling a little weird to me. But I said, no, Michael, she's planted that in your head. Dial it back. The second night, I started getting chills when I was walking from room to room. But that wasn't a big deal. My brother was murdered back in 1975. And so sometimes I will get chills when I'm walking around, and he smoked cigarettes. No one in this house smokes. So I would smell cigarette smoke. I knew he was around. So I reasoned it that way. I didn't smell cigarette smoke, but I figured, okay, he's visiting. The third night, it was strange. Before I went to bed, I was, I felt like someone else was in my room, in my apartment. I went to bed reluctantly. I still have a problem 20 years later. I still have a problem being by myself at night. I guess it's kind of post-traumatic stuff. Because when I see them, they're just in my house like that. I was lying down. I couldn't sleep. So I said, I'm going to meditate myself to sleep. I was lying on my back, and I felt the mattress go down, and it scared me. And when I opened my eyes, this person was that far from my face. And
I felt my spirit jump back.
it was intense. And then they just dissolved, like the blonde brother, just like gone. The molecules just dispersed. So those are some of the contacts that stand out. I've had others, but I can tell you about those.
What do you think the man is? What did they want, or what? What did you feel from them? I mean, did you think they were bad, good, or what?
I never felt quote unquote bad. I think the thing that scared me the most was the way they look. Outside of the Nordic guy who's humanoid, they look very bizarre. All I can tell you is this. One time they hurt me, but when I asked them not to, they stopped. So I think that maybe, and these are the grayest looking people. And what had happened was they changed my life for the better. But again, like shamanism, you got to go through that that fear. One night because usually when the gray people came, they would paralyze me. And they showed me, one night they showed me two things. They showed me, which I thought was a past life as a monk in the Catholic Church around the 16th century, had that little bad haircut with the bald up here and the little thing there and the terrible haircut. And then they showed me on the right side, my eyes were closed, they showed me a picture of an event that happened later. It wasn't apocalyptic. It was me speaking in front of some people, which it actually did happen. But one night I was paralyzed and I was sleeping on my stomach, and I felt a needle go into the back of my head where that little hollow is, where your neck, that stem there. Excruciating pain. That's all, pain. And then I could move again. I talked to my friend Donna Cunningham, who's crossed over. She was the astrologer. And she said, Michael, you're going to say that this is going to seem stupid to you, but you need to talk to these people. They're probably in here now. She said, you need to, when you're at home alone, they're probably there. They're probably listening. You need to set some boundaries. And I did. I went home and I was screaming, this has got to stop. You're hurting me, da, da, da. My wife came in at the time, Sandy, and she said, I'll never forget it. You were standing, she came in the house. She said she was out. She said, you were standing in the living room in your underwear, yelling up at the ceiling. She said, I didn't know what to think. I say all that to say, because they were coming twice a month, remember, new and full moon. The next time they They paralyzed me. In my mind's eye, they showed me a syringe. And I just felt a little pinprick here. It's like when the nurse takes your blood and you don't even feel it. You don't even feel it. It was like that. I took that, and then when the picture of the syringe went away, I could move, which means they left. Or at least I couldn't see them. I took that as they listened to me. That's how I took it. Now, people would say, well, they did this, they did that. But they came back. They didn't say I'm not coming back. But whatever they did, I didn't even feel. The other time, and just real quick, Jay and Jeffrey, and then I'm going to shut up because now I'm in a flow.
You're good. You're good.
I'm in a flow. When I got into the healing work, when I got in, I started right after these started. I started having urges that I wanted to do hands-on healing. So I started out doing Reiki. I was in Boston doing an anti-racism because I'm an anti-racism trainer. It's in my bio. I was in Boston, and I had a visit from one of the gray people, and I couldn't move, and the usual, and I closed my eyes. I was like, oh, I don't want to see what's going on. And it's on my business card now. They showed me, it was like an icon that you see on your computer. It was a gray pointing like that, look, and there were two hands in a prayer position, and there was a lightning bolt between them. And that's when I started my healing practice. It was like they were saying, you can use hands-on healing and prayer in your ministry. It impressed, I on my business card, I have my name and intuitive healing counseling, whatever, but I took the prayer hands, which we've seen, and it was a lightning bolt. And I got it from them. I got that from them.
Ooh. Definitely.
It's cool you were talking about how you said that they listened to you. They heard what you said, and the next time it didn't hurt. Betty Hill said almost the exact same thing. She's one of the first people to even bring this kind of abduction stories to light. And she distinctly remembers they were what we now call an amniocentesis, at least we think, but in the 60s when she was, how old she was in her 30s, they didn't test for children that way. They still killed a rabbit to see if there was pregnancy. But she said she distinctly remembers talking to the guy who was injecting her. She said, ow, it hurts. Even though he told her before it wouldn't. And then he touches her head and it doesn't hurt anymore.
That's right. So, I heard that story. Yes.
So,
yeah.
You're not. It's not a unique thing. It happens a lot. And I gotta ask because I have experienced, and I'm not sure if the Greys were abducting me or not. I don't have any evidence of that. But I have experienced night paralysis. And have they ever floated you?
Yep.
The Greys. I remember distinctly one time waking up in the evening. I was 10, 11. The covers were still on me and dangling, and I was above my bed, and I was touching the ceiling. I could feel the cold drywall on my face.
What?
I kind of remember going through it, but I don't. The next thing I remember after that is it was white. Like I went through the drywall, and then the next thing I know was lowering back down to my bed. I was going up and down. I couldn't move, and I couldn't scream. I did this. Trying to wake my parents up to get help.
I've had the sensation of floating, like going through a wall, but I got scared when I felt it, so I closed my eyes. I wouldn't open them, but I felt like I had been lifted up. I can't explain it, but it's so gentle. It's like But Jay, what you just said, I will share this with you. I'm not going to get into too much of this. But you triggered me. One night, usually I get my visits around anytime between 2 and 4. 1:30. Oh yeah.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, that's about the time I got
and I still wake up at those times. But this is what happened. My daughter divorced, and I have custody certain weekends. A few years ago, she came and she said to me, she said, "Daddy, where'd you go last night?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I got up to go to the bathroom and you weren't here." And I said, "You're joking. Why? I would never leave you here alone." She said, "Daddy, why would I lie to you?" She said, and our rooms were next to each other in the apartment. She had her bathroom, I had mine. She said, "I got up and I went in the bathroom and I saw you weren't there, but there was a light in the house. It was a full moon." She said, "And when I went in the living room, you weren't there either, but there was a light from the moon shining into the living room." And I said, "There was no full moon last night." And then she said, did you go with your friends?" I said, "Probably, but I would never leave you here alone by yourself without even waking you up to tell you." So that just triggered to me what you had just said. But the floating thing, yes. Yes. I mean, when they know how to do it, they know how to take you through walls, they know how to manipulate time and space. It's been a remarkable, it's just changed my life. But I say for the better, even though I still have problems at night when I'm by myself and my wife goes away for work or if she's out of town, I do go to sleep. But like I have a light on my computer here, but I will sleep until the last. I will wait until I'm there to sleep before I turn the light out. Like the light's not going to keep them from coming in, but in my mind, it's a safety net.
Yeah, same here. I always keep a really low level, like purple colored light
Yeah.
on in the bedroom. There are two things. I mean, I have cats, so if I happen to wake up to go to the bathroom at night, I don't accidentally step on a cat on the way
Exactly.
there.
Yes.
But
Yes. Yes.
it's also, you're right, it's a safety thing. It's like, I don't know, in my mind, the purple light will reveal them from any kind of cloaking devices or whatever they might have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. And I mean, yes, there are times I'm so exhausted I go right to bed. If I have a couple beers, I'm watching the game. Boom.
Yeah.
But I leave that light on. And people say, "Well, but that goes to show that they hurt you." Well, I don't know. I could say that I was hurt, but it's just the shock. It's the shock that I could get up and go to the bathroom or turn around and they're right there. If look, I'm a human person. If I showed up in your bedroom tonight at 3 o'clock, I just walk in your house, your locks are up, your family's there, I'd freak you out. Okay, now suppose I look like some of these brothers and sisters. They're not bad people, but it's a bizarre look. So I just kind of chalk it up to that.
Yeah, so speaking to that, what Jeffrey was, I think, was trying to emulate earlier. If you believe some of the creation myths, and they're fairly similar across the planet, if it's true that we are the product of alien species genetic mingling with the species on this planet, and if you believe like certain words in the Bible, we were created in their image and in their likeness, and if their image is like us, their ways and means are like us, that's because they're also territorial. They are good and bad. There are ones that start wars and ones that defend
Exactly.
and ones that. So it's just like the planet here. It's a diverse community, and one of the things I find that's funny, and I'm not religious, but I grew up Christian and I studied religions in college, in a
Yeah.
couple of classes, just a few electives. But it just seems to me that it's funny that some people are they're so ready and willing to believe in a God that was created by man, but they won't believe in the mathematics that aliens have to exist. If you do mathematics, it's impossible. We're a living planet in this galaxy, and then by extension, the universe.
Yeah.
Do you have a reasoning on that? I mean, I don't understand kind of your philosophy that you believe so much in this book with these incredible stories of miracles, but you can't believe that there's another planet with different species on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I'm not religious anymore. And I don't want to use the term I'm spiritual, but I think I am, and I don't knock the other religions. There's still things that mean a lot to me, but I think you can transcend all that. That's working for me. That's my caveat. People say, how can you be a reverend and believe that? Well, I'm in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and you know it's an more open kind of denomination and organization. I the I agree with you, and that I think that if you open a Bible or a Quran, everywhere that you see the word angel, if you put ET, it makes more sense.
And well, some of them also have like a species name. Like I believe the archangels are called Solarim.
The Sephirim and
They're seraphim and
seraphim, yeah, yeah,
cherubim. They
and that
have
was
there's a different name for each one of them. They have a different a different purpose. Each
yes,
species.
and you know what, Jay, you're right. I think we are made in their image, and when you see, even the praying mantis, bizarre phenostructure for the face, but this person had arms, legs, and a torso.
Mm-hmm.
So that it seems like that form is universal, as did the reptilian, as did the gray. Now, yes, there are beings of light, and some of them, I
Yeah.
guess, are so advanced or what have you that they don't even need a body. But we don't really need a body when we die. Our
Yeah.
consciousness is, yeah. But if they're going to be in a form, they will have two arms, two legs,
Yeah.
It
two
seems that
you
the
know,
symmetrical form of 2 arms, 2 legs, head,
is
eyes,
universal.
ears. Well, not just universal, but most successful for doing most things. Um, but I think some scientists
Humanoid.
predict that if and as we go further and further and more of us into space for longer and longer periods, that our bodies will probably change as well. Now, I haven't seen a reptilian, but I've heard, like you said, they're really muscular. The grays, not so much. They're just as fragile as us, probably even weaker than us. The mantises are probably somewhere between our strength and the reptilian strength, but far superior strength to a normal human.
An
Um,
intellect and a very sharp
and
intellect.
possibly a higher superior intellect. Yeah, that I would debate right now because we don't know their true purposes. They're hiding a lot of stuff from us. So, they could be just as primitive as us. We don't know.
Well, I mean, when I say that, they could be primitive, but I don't, if they can get here in a craft, I mean, they're technological
They
prowess.
possess a much better, greater technology, absolutely,
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
necessarily that you. I mean, if you use the example of Star Trek, and I do this quite a bit, especially in the UFO things, uh, there's things that we don't know about in the universe, and so many possibilities, things we can't even imagine. But there's a certain episode where this seemingly dim-witted species captures Geordie LaForge, the engineer of the Enterprise. But they're very mentally slow. Let's just say that. But they have control of technology that they from other people pretending to be it and in jeopardy. So other species come and try to help them in their spaceship, and then they steal technology from them and get stronger and stronger, but not necessarily smarter and maybe even emotionally evolved. So
It sounds
that
like
could be a
Earth.
possibility. Yeah.
Sounds like
We were
Earth.
talking about Star Trek
Sounds
before
good.
we started.
Sounds like Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It may be a retrospect on us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
Star
but
Trek
if
is
you look
famous
at
for that.
no, agreed. I mean, I've been going back and revisiting some of Zachariah Sitchin's work, and even if
Oh
you
yeah.
go look at whom I had the pleasure of meeting when he was alive. He lived in my neighborhood in New York. But even if you look at the Hindu cosmology, these beings, well, Greek, Roman, if you subscribe to the fact that they're not making this up, that these were gods, for lack of a better word. They were making love, they were getting drunk, they were committing adultery, they were fighting one another, they were godlike. The Anunnaki, which Stitchin talks about. So it's and then you have people like Jesus and these other saints and avatars trying to, and other people not even mentioned, trying to get us to be a little more civilized, to get along with one another. But these gods, if you will, and I'm not saying this is not the supreme intelligence or the force, or call it what you will, not only are we made in their image, but we've kind of taken on some of the warlike ways of them, because these
We've got their
people
same
weren't,
bad habits and
yeah, they
everything.
weren't all singing John Lennon's Imagine or Kumbaya. They were carrying on.
Yeah, absolutely. The parallels and similarities are just too. It doesn't matter which Bible you pick up or which religious text you pick up. Japanese gods, same thing. They're just
Mm-hmm.
as debauched as anyone else. And one of the best things that I use, and I use the Anunnaki, for example. People always,
Yeah,
especially just
they,
say, "Oh,
they,
there's no
they,
way
they
that
seem
aliens are
like
in the
a
Bible."
they
That
seem
aliens.
like a fun group, Jay. You may want to have a
They
beer with
probably
one
would
of them.
be. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
imagine all
yeah,
the
yeah.
things you could do with all the technology they have. But when people don't believe that aliens could exist, or that our stories of gods and heroic events are from life and being, flesh and blood type beings, I always say, look, the first language that ever comes up is the Sumerian language. It's the
Yes.
first written language, allegedly, according to modern science and history, right now. So they invent this language that you read, and it's cuneiform. They use a stylus with a triangle on it, and you make these weird triangular shapes. And I don't know how the hell you read it. I can't read it. But the first stories they write are of these superhuman beings who come to
Yes.
Earth from another planet
That's right.
and change their planet and do all these things. Now, who invites language and then writes Star Wars and expects the people to understand what the hell it is?
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. So this story is pure fiction and is the first Star Wars story ever, and it's absolutely fictional, or it really happened.
Yes. That's
There's no in
and I look
between. It's one or the other.
and I
I think
look
it
at the
really
Bible.
happened.
I look at the Bible that way. You
Yeah,
know,
same with the Bible. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm not saying it's beautiful. There's spiritual truths. There's truths. There's soap opera stuff. Incest. There's adultery. There's wars.
Mm-hmm.
Rumors of wars. And I went to Union Theological Seminary, which is one of the top seminaries in the country. It's a progressive seminary. But I was taught to read the Bible who, what, when, where, and how, like you read a newspaper. And it served me well, because I was coming from a tradition, in the Baptist tradition, where you couldn't ask those questions. You couldn't
Yeah,
think.
you weren't
If,
reading it to analyze it.
right, right. If you
Yeah.
did, then you didn't have faith. So imagine my surprise when I come across people like Zachariah Sitchin, when I come across the Reverend Barry Downing, who's a colleague and a friend, when I come across the things I was coming across, it was like it was right there. It was hidden in plain sight. But our scholars and physicists and archaeologists, they didn't have that. This was myth. This was myth. See, our more conservative brothers and sisters say the Bible says what it means, and it means what it says. So that's one extreme. The liberal part of the tree says this is all metaphor and facsimile and mythology, where the truth is, like the Buddhists talk about, is in the middle. That these people are
Mm-hmm.
talking about, listen, with Christianity, even Rome, they couldn't understand how these folks would say, kill me, crucify, do what you want, but you can't take away my experience and what I know. Now, either you could say, like Rome said, these people are fanatics and they're dangerous, or you can say, something happened there and we don't know what it was, but these folks have changed. and they have gotten in touch with a reality that we don't understand. Well, that's the same thing now with experiencers.
It took a lot of Catholics and Christians eaten by lions in their coliseums before they realized, oh, and then guess what happened? The religion took over. Started in
Yes.
Rome. I mean, well, it
Well,
started in the Middle
but
East,
it took over, but it took over the way Rome wanted it to take over. It's like now, and now I'm going to shift with the last 45 minutes, if you walk with me through what's happened this week. I am an experiencer. Yes. I'm watching good stuff. My government, by hook or crook, is now being pushed to pull the lid off something that's been secret for 70 years or over. So I'm happy. But I'm also concerned and cautious because now, which is the military, is taking over the narrative of other experiencers like myself and others. Some people had good experiences, not so good experiences. But now the military, because they're thinking all the time, our leaders, now they're saying, you know what? We may not be alone, but this is a national security matter. And you can do anything you want under the guise of national security. Now, some of these folks are dangerous. Now, if you go through the literature, World War II, Foo Fighters, Korean War, there were some pilots who lost their lives, challenging some of these ships, firing on some of them. But my heart goes out to the families. Some of them probably never know what happened. You get a flag and you get your $10,000. We're not going to say Michael lost his life going up to a mothership. But my point being is this, that the narrative is still in the hands. Now they're not UFOs, they're UAPs. See, we're changing it. Now it's the military, it's the government who's the experts. And we're here to protect you. We couldn't protect you before. And now I guarantee, well, we heard Brother Grush, or what was he said the other night. I'm glad he came out, and I hope he and his family will be okay. But it didn't take him 48 hours before he started talking about this is a national security threat, that some of these beings are malevolent. And that may be true. But what about the other people who are not in the U.S. military, who've been singing this song for years? John Mack, who's not an experiencer, late John Mack, who's saying, wait, before you aim your F-16 missiles at them, some of them are coming here telling us you need to straighten up and fly right. You're destroying your planet. Some of them are hovering over our missile silos because they're concerned that we're playing with fire. But that's not the narrative. And so on one part of me is like, okay, the lid's coming off. But if you control the narrative with fear, which always seems to work, then you control. And I got a feeling that you and I and Jeffrey, in the next 6 months, 2 years, we're going to wind up at war because we always need a new enemy. And all you got to do is say they're a threat to national security, human or non-human. And here we go again.
They're actually something we would argue that we're already at war with them.
What was that Las Vegas thing? Did you see the Las Vegas story? That was pretty weird about the 10-foot aliens and all that. Las Vegas.
It was weird. It was weird. I don't know if I'm buying it. I'm like I say, I'm cautious. I know all of this is rolled out. I think they did a pretty good job rolling it out to the public. It's still not on mainstream media, but I'm seeing that story. I'm seeing Brother Grush, and if I'm mispronouncing it, stop. And I'm seeing Dr. Greer's all the same weekend. His press conference is coming out. It's like, what are the chances that all this is going to happen at the same time?
Hey, did you know of Posey Gilbert at all?
Yes, I knew Posey.
Has he passed away?
Yes, he's been gone for several years now.
I interviewed him a long time ago, and I checked his page, and a lot of people were speculating that.
Yeah, I forgot. I think he had, I don't know whether it was diabetes related or whatever. I think he had an amputation go on. He was in the support group I was in his support group. He was there before I got there. When I was first having my experiences in New York, a guy named Harold Englund was the support group leader, and Posey was one of the people there.
I was worried that's what happened. That's what people were saying.
And he was heavy into the Anunnaki thing, the stitching thing.
And then I saw New York, and then I said New York with you because you just mentioned. I was like, I bet you knew of him.
Yeah, I knew Posey.
Cool. Well, I hope he's trucking in space and doing good wherever he's
resting
at.
in peace. Yeah. So getting back to this, and I've always been, I was even skeptical, and I'm always having a healthy dose of skepticism, I think, because I feel now what happened today, where these other people are backing him up. They've come out and said there are 12 craft that we have and some bodies. I don't know if you heard that. Backing him up.
Yeah,
saying
I've heard we have up to 15.
Well, we got a lot of them. We'll put it like that.
Yeah, it's more than 12, I think.
That made me a little less skeptical, because from my experience, if you're with military intelligence, you don't retire from that. Now, this guy's a whistleblower, but there's some people, I've met people who said, well, at conferences, who said, well, I used to be with the military. I enjoyed your talk. I used to be, and then we're retired. You don't retire. It's like retiring from the mafia. You can't. Now people have various, different levels of clearances, so everybody who works for intelligence has these high levels, but you don't really retire from it. And so I was skeptical of this brother, and I was taken aback that it took him less than 48 hours to talk about the threat. Okay, you navigate it, but now these folks have come out today and said, yeah. I'm not going to give you my name, but this is where they are. So this has been an important week. Greer's got his movie was released 2 days ago. I think he was today talking to I forget someone today, forget his name. Anyway, so this has been a pretty eventful last 72 hours, and now it's just to see where this goes.
And then, of course, you have a lot of people revving up the whole Project Bluebeam thing. We had Augie Nost on, and I'm not saying I agree with all that. There's some truth to it, but there's a lot of people writing that a fake alien invasion is going to happen. That seems like that'd be a real big pain in the butt if you had to orchestrate that. I mean, it's certainly possible.
Well, not yet. I put it back over there. When Greer first came out with Disclosure, and you've read the book, I've been rereading that as well. Carol Rosen, who worked for Werner von Braun, as you know, who came over with Operation Paperclip, said back in the 70s that I may have the sequence off, but it was going to be Russia. We're still having the issues with Russia. It was going to be Middle East terrorism. Then there was going to be the big deal made over an asteroid. And he said the final card that would be played by the United States was the extraterrestrial card, that these are our new enemies. And he said it would all be based on a lie. And for me, that's what I'm seeing, and I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I'm seeing now. That we're being prepped. They're the narrative now. First, they don't exist, but now they do, and I can see them saying, "We wanted to tell you, but we didn't know how," and but they do exist, and they are a threat. And so we get walked into this thing where now we have another enemy. We got so much money we're spending on defense, and who knows where that money goes to. I'm sure some of it goes to black budget stuff. And so we always knew when you're asking that much money for defense, we spend more money on defense than any nation on the planet. You got to have an enemy. And I'm thinking
our budgeted for the black projects is somewhere in the trillions range.
Yeah, yeah, and it's probably more than that. It's
$40 trillion a year.
Yeah.
Probably more than that.
So here we have, because we got an enemy now. And I think, yes, we can argue whether he was a real Nazi or whether he wasn't, and it's moot now. Now he's gone. But he said this to her, and I believe it. And you can see the progression. These enemies, we did. First, it was Arab terrorism. It is Russia. It's always going to be Russia. Now it's China. Now it's an asteroid. But he said the final card would be the extraterrestrial card, and that it would all be based on a lie. But the other thing, I'm sorry, Jeff, what you were saying, because I got off on my little tangent. But if you read the book, they also talk about holograms, where they have the technology now, it's probably extraterrestrial technology, where they could stage the second coming of Jesus.
I've seen that story about them doing like a hologram over Cuba or something weird like that.
Well, you see it in Vegas when Michael Jackson was up there performing, and Michael's been dead for several years now. There's a hologram, so they have the technology.
There's that spiral vortex that they projected over Norway several years ago.
It can happen.
One of the weirdest things that happened to me was when I was having a lot of UFO sightings in Georgia, pyramid craft. I actually saw a pyramid type craft over power lines with a friend Greg, and a ball of light came down towards us. And the weirdest part about that is I don't remember anything else. And I asked him about it years later, and he looked at me like I was crazy. He didn't remember it, but I remember it right now and see it in my head. It's instances like that where you wonder if they've taken you. And if they have, I don't remember a damn thing. They Men in Black me or whatever, because I don't remember anything like that. But there have been weird things where they've been over. Like one time in Florida, I was walking down a road with a Siberian Husky, wolf kind of hybrid situation. Dog, I don't have her anymore. It's a long time ago. But a big orange, weird, rusty ball floated over the street, and there were no chains on it. There was not a helicopter carrying it. It was like a weird, rusty, weird orange ball just floating over the street. I know recently I saw some UFO footage, and there was like a spike-looking rusty thing in the air that was kind of weird. I was like, that kind of looked like that. But to get back to the Georgia pyramid craft, my mom also saw those coming out of a hole in the sky. And I remember her grabbing it was like a portal, like orangish green, weird, and they were coming out of it. And she saw it. And I remember her going, "Oh my God, Jeffrey," and being scared. And she don't like to talk about it, but she remembers it. But during that time, a strange craft appeared over the house that was like a helicopter with no blades on it, like a cockpit. And there was a man in it that looked like Top Gun, with all the stuff on and the apparatus. And he goes, and it shot off and didn't make a noise. And my friend Jason saw that with me. And it was like the UFO activity was happening around there, and maybe some kind of government agency sent something out to investigate, but never came to me face to face or anything like that. But definitely that was the kind of weird stuff. And when I hear stories about my labs and all that stuff, I know some of it in exopolitics can get a little kooky. But, I mean, there's stuff going on. This was a long time ago. This was in my early 20s. So, I mean, God, what are they doing now? And what do they have out there that they're doing that we don't know about? I mean, there's a lot, probably, that we can't even fathom. No question. Secret space and all that stuff.
I remember when you talking about that, I haven't thought about this in years. I remember when I was first having those experiences, and they were coming every new and full moon, twice a month for about 8 months to a year. I remember there were times when, and this was in Manhattan, that I would see black helicopters unmarked at all, just flying over the Upper West Side where I lived, flying over the hotel where I was. We lived in a residential hotel. I remember that. Not all the time, but at least on 2-3 occasions. They were unmarked, and they would just, they're just flying.
Whether they're looking for the UFOs or whether they're just standard patrol or training patrols, people don't maybe realize that, New York is, I don't know if it is now, but when I was in Connecticut going to college, 9 million people lived in the city every day. Mm-hmm. And then people came to the city to work, another 9 or 10 million every day. So there's 20 million people there. It's a busy, busy city. A lot of people crammed into a very small area, yet people are being abducted from high-rise hotels, high-rise condominium buildings, high-rise office buildings in broad daylight sometimes. And people don't realize that millions of people disappear every day. They don't ever come back. And that's kind of scary. Where are they all going? They can't all be serial murdered. They can't all, drown in a fishing accident. Millions of people, where do they go? So think about that. If a advanced species can come into your large 20 million people inhabited city undetected and grab people undetected and put them back in their beds undetected, the person that's abducted might realize it, but no one else does. That's saying a lot. That's some high technology. How do you fight that?
Yeah. And you bring up a good point. I mean, if you believe in the Grenada Treaty that Eisenhower had to make,
Thank
and
you. I was going to bring that up.
And part of that is great minds thinking alike. Part of that is it's many levels of it, I think, but part of that is I can't fight you. When the Nordic folks, the way the story goes, said you need to dial back the nuclear stuff and we can help you with your spiritual growth. And Eisenhower says, I can't do that. I mean, who's going to make that decision? I'm not letting him off the hook, but, we just got through winning this war, only country with this nuclear bomb. And so he's advised to watch out for this group of Greys, not all Greys. And they say, look, make the treaty, you will give you the names of the people. We'll take Jay, Reverend Carter, and Jeffrey. We'll give you the names. It's okay. And Eisenhower says, well, I can't stop you. So he signs this treaty, and then he realizes that he got. This is how we got to where we are today. And I bring this up because I when I was having my experiences, and I thought that they were good, a little scary, but things were going well. Well, you've heard of the book, this Allies of Humanity, written by Marshall Summers or whatever. And he talked about, it was a little too fear-based for me, but he brought up some good points. His first point was, and I suggest at least read some of it if you haven't. The Allies are a group of extraterrestrials who either their planet was destroyed or they're similar to what we have, but they don't tell who they are because they fear the repercussions of these more malevolent extraterrestrials. The way this brother writes, it's like he's the only one with this message or this message that you can trust. And that turned me off about it. But he did say this, a couple of things. He said, first of all, people say, well, if they wanted to take over these beings, not all beings, they could just take over. And he was saying, well, why would they do that? This is a planet that is beautiful. It's rich in resources. Now, I don't know how true that is. We seem to be destroying everything. But he was saying that you need to be on guard. You're growing up. You got to grow up. This is Childhood's Ends. That's Arthur C. Clarke's his book.
Yeah.
You got to grow up. And all these entities don't mean you well. I like that. Because I don't think all of them do. They're like people. Everybody doesn't mean you well. But it was a little too fear-based and cultish for me. But it raised my curiosity. But what I do agree with, and he's saying that the Allies, they call themselves the Allies of Humanity, they're saying the best way to combat this is to stay vigilant, but also to develop your spirituality. That way, you're vibrating at a higher frequency, but also practically that every new thing that social media tells you or you hear on the news, you're not so fear-based from it because you're grounded. You're coming from your center. You're coming from a place of strength. Those things I agreed with, because whether there were extraterrestrials existed or not, in order for us to evolve, we've got to be able to go inside. We've got to
we got to stop killing each other and wasting our animals. I mean, I like a good cheeseburger like any other guy, but the way in which we treat them before they're made into food there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, and just the way we treat each other. So it's
Yeah.
called The Allies of Humanity. I'm sure you've heard of it. You could read it. Like I said, it
Saved
could be
it.
kind of
Saved the cover.
cultish. Huh?
Oh, I said I saved the cover of it. So I'd heard of it, but I've never read it. But I saved it
That's
so
some
I could look
interesting
at it
stuff.
later.
It's just that he's like the only one who can, because the allies, these extraterrestrials are talking to him. He's the only one who can. It's implied,
Yeah.
and
It
you don't
seems
need
like it
that.
can go to you ego wise, like I'm the chosen one. Da, 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 da,
Right,
da. That's
right.
when it starts getting kooky.
Yeah, and then you lose me.
Yeah,
Then you lose me.
definitely. I understand that for sure. And so, what is your current book? Do you have a new book coming out? What's your current
Well,
book?
I don't. My latest book is when we were talking before the show. I'm thinking about writing a book of sermons because some people at church are. I didn't. I was reluctant. I said, "Who's going to buy it?" But people said, "Yeah, I would buy your book of sermons," and they're not obviously not going to. I'm not a UFO preacher, so but I'm going to do that. I'm thinking about doing it. What I have coming up, my last book about a year and a half ago was called. I'll show it to you. It's called Initiation. It's it's a handbook for people who are experiencers or think they are. It gives you some things you can look at to say maybe I have been contacted. It tells you about uh, the characteristics of people who are experiencers or who are open to that. That was been my last book, so I've been kind of pushing that. The subtitle is called "The Spiritual Transformation of the Experiencer." It's a guide for contact experiences. So if you have someone in your family who may be thinking they are or not, I go into a little bit about relationships because there's the data shows there's a high divorce rate or separation rate for couples where one person is having these experiences and the other one isn't. It takes a lot of glue to keep it together.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because the other one is shifting and changing and going through this stuff, and one is going, "What the hell is going on here?" So anyway, I highly recommend it. Obviously, all my books are on Amazon. All 5 of them are on Amazon.
What's
In
your
September,
website? What's your website for everyone?
my website is michaeljscarter.com. My email is michaeljscarter@gmail.com. I will answer all emails. I have my Facebook page is Reverend Michael J. Carter. And you can go to Facebook and there it is. I have 2 sites, Reverend Michael J. Carter and Michael J. Carter. And in September, I've been invited back to the Michigan UFO Con, and
Oh,
that's in
cool.
September, that weekend. I was there last year; it was wonderful. So I'm going back again this weekend. I mean this September.
Well, in the history of the show, when it comes to African Americans, there's been 3 on about this subject. And my co-host Wham, Carol Matthews, I know she collects stories of African Americans who have gone through this phenomenon. So that might be someone you might want to talk to sometime. I'm just curious, when you first started doing this, how hard was that with those elements? And the 3 people that I've had on, let me name them real quick. You're the third, Gilbert Posey Gilbert. And then this one definitely was possibly some fraudulent situations. Prophet Yahweh a long time ago. That was weird, wasn't it? Like, he was great and fun to interview, but there's definitely, they thought it was a balloon or something, right? But it was weird. Like, he was all over the news and stuff.
His name was Yahweh.
Yeah, Prophet Yahweh.
Wow.
He passed away. There's definitely some cult weirdness with that for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know that, when I first got into it, there weren't many people. Well, it's still, even when I was on Ancient Aliens, I just did this thing. They've been airing with Lawrence Fishburne on History's Greatest Mysteries on the Phoenix Lights. That's still airing. They did a great job. I have to say that.
I like him. He has a great voice.
Yeah. Oh, he's wonderful. And he's a big UFO enthusiast from what I've
Is
heard.
he? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
He, it was just, I was the only fly in the buttermilk, as they say. I'm noticing a change. I'm noticing a change. More people attending, not a lot. If it's 2 or 3, that's still more than what it usually is. what was I going to say? The A lot of it, Jeffrey, is cultural, and by that I mean from a religious, spiritual standpoint. African Americans have taken that Jesus story and we've adopted it as our own. And so if it doesn't have Jesus in it, it's from the devil or it's something that has to be suspect. And I think when you're fighting that part of the culture, usually a lot of people will say, "Oh, the only white people have those experiences." What are you crazy?
Yeah.
What do you think? So you're going up against that as well. I do know a few more people of color who are thinking maybe they've had experiences or want to talk about it. There's a guy named Roderick Martin. You may want to have him on your show. He is the head of MUFON in Texas.
Write that down.
Roderick Martin. There's a guy named Marquis Williams, Marquis. He has a podcast. They both have podcasts. and they're huh?
I wrote those down.
Yeah. And if your friend wants to have me on the show, please give her my information.
I came across with Billy Carter, and he hasn't answered my emails.
Billy Carson.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Yeah, Billy Carson today was interviewing Stephen Greer.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because this is what you can Google it. It's on YouTube. It's the 20th anniversary of his press conference or what have you.
Yeah,
but those are few. I don't know if Billy Carson is an experiencer. I don't think Roderick is, but he is a MUFON. He's the head of MUFON, and he's a member of MUFON in Texas. He's in their hierarchy. He's and Marquis is, I don't know if he's an experiencer. I think he is, but he has a podcast. But I'd be more than happy to go on her show if you want to give her my information.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when it comes, I saw that missing 411 UFO connection recently, and I've interviewed David Paulides a long time ago. It's been a while, but that, the whole missing 411 thing of people disappearing from parks and all that kind of stuff. But at first, David didn't talk about paranormal stuff at all. He refused to. And at one point, I was doing a written interview with him, and he admitted a Bigfoot question. He goes, people will think I'm crazy if I think their loved ones got, took by Bigfoot and bring that up when they're grieving. And I understand that for sure. But now it seems like he's gone full throttle. The last two documentaries, Hunted, there was something with Bruce Maccabee and his wife and some kind of being that was cloaked in a tree and a UFO sighting over a school. And of course, they're telling all these creepy missing stories, in these documentaries that are bone-chilling creepy. But the latest one was missing 411 UFO connection, and he's just full throttled embrace that one of the elements are UFOs taking people. Mm-hmm. And there's a story of a guy in there, older white dude that worked all his life, and they took him, and he came and told us, I forget his name, it's in the documentary, but he did like 4 lie detector tests and passed every one. And one of the creepy things he said that creeped me out was, he goes, they knew I had a vasectomy, so they put me back. They didn't take me. So other cases, the people had stuff, nothing wrong with them reproductive wise and had like Germanic heritage or something weird. Those people didn't come back. And it just kind of creeped me out thinking about me and testicular cancer and going through all that. Then at some point they say, Jeffrey, we're going to throw you back like a fish that's too small. And, are they taking people for reproductive stuff? If everything, I have a daughter, so everything's working, but they could have said, okay, Lance Armstrong here, we're going to throw him back. But what I'm trying to figure out is, let's say, for instance, that testicular cancer thing didn't happen to me. Would I have never came back and ended up in some, Planet Zanzibar breeding program? It's just creepy the way they talk about that missing 411 UFO connection. And not to say every person that goes missing is taken by aliens or Bigfoot or whatever. It could be a serial killer or elements or whatever. But there's definitely some creepy stuff that something seems to be happening, maybe paranormal, weird to some of these missing people. Like some of those stories are crazy.
Yeah.
Like they'll find a gun, like a gun in his clothes one place, and then find a pistol like on a mountain far away, like miles away. Like just weird stuff where the FBI gets involved and things like that. So I know we're talking about Eisenhower doing the deal to take people. So that gives me creeps just thinking about it. Yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it's a tough situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I actually know a little bit. I think I know a little bit more about that than most. I've been trying to. That's the big thing I've been trying to lock down. I've been looking at this, Michael, since I was about 11, so 1976, 77.
Jay saw
in
Bigfoot.
I've seen Bigfoot. In 72, 73, just to give you the background, Hurricane Agnes came through the East Coast and like just ripped up North Carolina, South Carolina, Maryland, where I was, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, New York, just destroyed the whole East Coast. We were without power for about 2 weeks. The bulk of the state of Maryland and Pennsylvania were without power for 2 to 3 months. That's how bad the damage was. So my parents were big book files. And we had just moved up from Florida back to Maryland, and they had all their books in boxes in our basement, which flooded. So we had like a 3-foot deep pool, indoor pool for a couple of months. It was kind of cool when I was a kid. So, but anyway, at 6 years old, my dad saved some of his books, not all of them. Most of them got destroyed. But in one of the boxes I saw he had a copy of Mein Kampf, which is Hitler's book. And like right next to it, or within the same box, was Eric Denikin's Marriage of the Gods. And I didn't read it then. I just flipped through it and thought, oh, this is cool. And I saw the one picture that got me going was, I think it's in Guatemala. There's a stone carving with a cogged wheel, like you would see inside of a watch or modern technology. And I'm thinking, why would people that were, 12,000, 10,000, 4,000 years ago drawing cogs? They wouldn't have had that. So it didn't. Anyway, going forward, I heard early on in like this later 70s and maybe early 80s about the Greada Treaty, and that really bugged me out just as much as it bugged out Jeff, because basically what the gist of the story is, like you said, he was approached by the Nordics first, and they said, we'll help you fight this other group if you give up your weapons, or at least the nuclear weapons anyway. And he said no, and then he heard from the and I believe it's the Zeta Reticuli race.
Zeta Reticuli, yeah.
Yeah, and he says, yeah, okay, I'll take your treaty. You give us your technology, and you can abduct 100,000 people. You have to give us their names. They can't know about it. They can't remember. But some of them did. Betty Hill, Barney Hill, they remember. Not long after, like you said, he realized he'd gotten duped. And I got to imagine that the technology that they actually were going to give us would be like the kind of stuff they give kids, their children, if they have children. Most of them are clones. But anyway, what happened in my mind is that Eisenhower sold our birthright for a ray gun, which he never got.
Mm-hmm.
And the story that you were referring to with the Zeta Reticulans, with the Allies of Humanity in the Nordics saying not to trust them, what I have heard about this story is that the Zeta Reticulans, in their binary system, were in control of 3 to 5 planets. I think there was 3 planets in one system they had just devastated, mined to, just used all the usable resources on those 3 planets, and 2 planets in the other binary system. They had interstellar technology, so they went looking for help and trying to play like I told you before about the aliens in Star Trek that were dim-witted but pretended to be in jeopardy. That's what they did, and they met the Nordics and other races and said, we're in jeopardy. And they said, well, we'll give you our technology if you help us with whatever they need, medicine, fissionable material, whatever. And so they immediately made a trade where the technology was traded right away to the Nordics, and then war broke out. And they've been at war with them for thousands of years, allegedly. And when they came to our planet, they realized, well, we're not going to give them the technology. We'll just, we'll throw them a few bones, some ancient stuff that we don't use anymore. And from that point on, and this is 1953, 54-ish, allegedly we've been at war with these Zeta Reticulans, and I don't think we're winning.
Yeah, I know reading Corso's book was a little enlightening about some of the technology but everything we do, we make we make weapons out of.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean,
I
he
tell
probably
you,
all two military technologists. I mean, that's the DuPont, got the Velcro stuff. They also got the Kevlar and the what did he call it?
you know,
Atomically aligned metallic fibers.
Lockheed Martin has given some,
Lockheed Martin
and
got the skins for the ships. Yeah, I mean, all kinds of
um,
stuff.
but the thing is, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie. I think it's on Prime. I bought it. Have you ever seen The 11th Green?
The 11th Green, like isn't
Yeah.
Stephen Green? No,
No,
I have
well, as
not.
in, it's worth seeing. It's about the Creator Treaty.
Okay, I'll put it
Okay,
in.
and you say it's on Prime?
It should be on Prime, but you can Google it and see where it is. I think I bought it. I just can't find it right now. But I keep it. It's wonderful. It's a little sleeper hit. It's called The 11th Green, and it's about that treaty. It's about Eisenhower and the treaty that he made with these beings.
I'll definitely check that out.
That's what I've
That's one of
always
the biggest
wondered is
mysteries I've
like,
been looking at.
where's the root of
the
that
11th
story? What's the root of that story? I mean,
the root of that story is some whistleblowers who said I was there.
It's actually earlier than that. The actual root of it is 1936 to 38 Germany. There was allegedly a craft of the Greys that crashed in the Black Forest, which they recovered. The Nazis recovered, and were able to do horrible things with it. I mean, they almost took over the world with what they were able to make with that ship. They weren't able to get their jets out in time. If they gotten the jets out earlier, we'd be speaking German. If they gotten out the particle beams earlier, they probably would be speaking Japanese and German. But in any event, allegedly there was a treaty offered to them also by these same Zeta Reticulans at that same time to trade technology for whatever they needed, materials, food, what have you.
This is what Werner von Braun was talking about.
More than likely, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because he did say we had help from people from other worlds. And if I'm not sure, there's some literature that says that some of these beings he was talking to were Nordics. Because again, we all think of the Nordics as, these wonderful alien, angelic looking beings. And there's a group of Nordics like it is with the Greys that is kind of rogue, and they're not, kumbaya people. But that's where they were getting their information. That's where they're getting the technology. And you're right. If maybe a year or two longer, and Hitler would have won, because it's just the technological process. We couldn't compete with that.
And
he did really good to bolster that company after World War I, because they were crushed after World War I. They weren't out to build, weapons, ships, and armies and all that. But in secret, somehow, when did Hitler begin his power? 25? No, 30, 32, something like that.
Yeah.
And then within just 15 years, he's almost taken over the world.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we got like 3 minutes. I don't want to end it. I would do an all-nighter, but we can't. I've loved it. I appreciate it so much, Michael. Amazing guest. I definitely want to get you back on.
I was going to say we can do a part 2. Just let's talk about it.
Definitely. And some people it's like, I know some people that popped up, Robert Salas, about the UFOs coming and shutting down missile silos. And he's like, what, in the Air Force or whatever, and doing interviews in that book? That's weird altogether.
Yeah, the UFOs.
Another weird old friend that popped in my head, he's passed, John Vasquez, Fort Benning, Georgia. There was a weird UFO alien with the troops there. There's a book about it, like East of Eden.
Well, allegedly Eisenhower met with the Nordics there at Fort
Benning. Some crazy stuff there. He was a friend of mine, and he's passed now. But supposedly something happened at that base, and the troops saw a UFO and an alien.
Yeah, something at Rendlesham Forest or something.
Yeah, it was similar to that, but in Georgia, Fort Benning, but very similar to that case. And I knew John, and he used to call me and tell me like he went on a base and he thought someone injected him. And I was like, this is getting X-Files weird. I need to get off the phone. That was a long time ago. But I appreciate it so much. And what's your site again?
My site, thank you again for asking. It is michaeljscarter.com. My email is michaeljscarter at gmail.com. My books are on Amazon. Just type in Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. They'll all pop up. And if you want to call me, my website, my fan page is Reverend Michael J.S. Carter on Facebook.
And we appreciate it so much. It's been really great, and definitely want to have you back. Thanks so
Yes,
much, Michael.
let's talk about it.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It was awesome.
Okay,
Thanks,
y'all,
everybody.
listen, have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks,
and,
you too. I got the whole weekend off. Woo-hoo.
I got to go to work Sunday. Listen,
Oh, bummer.
keep your lungs clean.
Yeah, as long as Canada puts them fires out.
Yeah, we'll
that's
be
crazy.
okay.
You're listening to United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, 105.3. Everybody have a good weekend. Good night, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Let's see.